Thank you. This is the first group of predators that we're going to talk about today. When people fall behind on their bills, as we imagine many people have over the shutdown, there are a number of companies that make great profits. We think often exploiting people who have gotten behind on their debts. And one of those is debt settlement companies. And while we have pretty good rules in Ohio to protect you from debt settlement companies, although the companies are always lobbying the General Assembly to change that, there are some things you need to know about them and how it works. Um, and it sounds like a great idea, but it really, at the end of the day, there are very few situations where it seems to me um, that the debt settlement can provide a better alternative to you. Sorry, my headphones are dying as we go. Um, the company promises to negotiate discounts, but instructs you to stop paying your creditors. That is not good advice. Um, uh, uh, and by the way, there's nothing that debt settlement companies can do that you can't generally pretty simply do for yourself. What happens when you stop paying your creditors? You stop payments are, get redirected to the debt settlement company. So they have you say, don't pay them, pay us. They allow then all of your accounts to go into default, and your credit is immediately damaged. So all the things we just talked about a second ago would start to kick in and start to cause your credit score to drop pretty precipitously and pretty quickly. In addition, almost every credit arrangement that I know of has late fees and sometimes what's called default interest. And those fees and interest accrue every month while folks are waiting to get paid. And remember that money's not going to the creditors immediately, or maybe even ever in some cases. It's going to the debt settlement company itself. Um, and then only after they hold your money until they're paid in full will they consider or start negotiating with your creditors on your behalf. Um, you could skip all those steps by doing that negotiation directly yourself. Can you move to the next slide, Brian? So there's six serious risks of doing business with debt settlement companies. One is many creditors just simply don't participate in the debt settlement business, and this is something that we regularly are able to prove in court and in arbitrations when we sue these debt settlement companies that they don't disclose to their clients up front. Certain creditors like Chase, Amex, and others just won't work with debt settlement companies at all. Discover is a big one that doesn't negotiate with debt settlement companies. So there's a very strong chance that even if the debt settlement company does everything they say they're going to do, they won't even be able to get to the into the door to have a conversation with very large creditors that may be important to resolving your problem. The second problem, and I referenced it in the last slide, is that your debt keeps growing. Uh, Third, you have the risk of serious credit damage. Um, and fourth, and this is often when people realize that something's dramatically wrong after they sign up to participate with a debt settlement company, all of a sudden they're getting sued. Or they find out that they've been sued after, but by finding out that their employer has been served with a garnishment of their wages because certainly these debt settlement companies lead you to believe that all these things are being handled and you no longer have to worry about those debts. Well, that doesn't prevent creditors from initiating lawsuits, and they often do. In those lawsuits, if they're undefended, and again, some of the debt settlement companies are actually even law firms. Those law firms imply that they're going to protect you in the event that you're sued, but often they don't ever answer those complaints. And so you could end up with judgments against you, lien on your house. So if you own real estate, you're particularly vulnerable. Liens on your car, attachments on your bank account, and garnishments on your wages. all things that put you at great risk. And in Ohio, the garnishment can be 25% of your net pay. That's a big percentage. And in most households, including mine, if 25% of my net pay were to disappear overnight, I would have a hard time meeting my bills, paying my mortgage, and feeding my family. Um, the company also hide their fees, and they often have excessive fees. Fees often, particularly for people in Ohio, where the state law limits the fees to 8.5% of the debt, often take fees that they're not entitled to. And kind of getting everybody to this point, this industry has a long history of deception. They've had multi-million dollar enforcement orders, companies like Freedom Debt Relief from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau back when they were enforcing the law, and it creates serious risks to you. Here are some of the just to be on the lookout. Here are the marketing practices that should tip you off that this is not something that you should participate in, that you'll see from debt settlement companies. One, somebody telling you they can guarantee results. That just simply is an impossibility in this environment and in this arena. Second, they will have really good salespeople engaging in very high pressure sales tactics. They will tell you anything to get you to sign up because they typically get paid on a commission. So you're going to have really good salespeople working you over and trying to tell you virtually anything you want to hear to get you to agree to a ACH being applied to your bank account. Being told anybody that tells you to stop communicating with your debtors, with your creditors, that should be a red flag in somebody who's offering to try to help you through your debt problems. Being told to ignore creditors isolates you, accelerates your default, and puts you in a worse situation than when you started. Legitimate services, to the extent they are legitimate, don't charge large fees before settling your debts. If nothing else, they should start to settle your debts before they get paid, and maybe get paid at the end of the process. You won't find any of the large debt settlement companies that will structure their agreement that way. Anything where they provide you with vague or confusing agreements, you'll see, just like any consumer contract that you sign these days, and that's a subject for a whole different seminar. Lots of fine print and lots of language pushing you into arbitration agreements, waiving certain claims that you might have against them, barring your ability to bring a case as a class action. They don't do that for your benefit. All those terms and conditions in those long contracts are written very favorably to the debt settlement company. And so, as with this contract or with any consumer contract, be very wary of the fine print and the risks that provides to you. And anybody who promises to settle all your debts is we know for sure is lying, because, as I mentioned a little bit ago, there are just certain creditors that won't deal with these companies at all. And in fact, there are a lot of better alternatives to debt settlement. One is you can negotiate directly with your creditors. Contact your creditors, ask about payment plans, hardship programs, interest rate reductions, forbearance. Many of those creditors will work with you, particularly under the circumstances that TSA workers are in light of the federal government shutdown, which has been extraordinarily well publicized and well known. And in fact, the lowest wage workers who were impacted by the settlement are probably the folks that work at TSA. And so knowing that, I think would give you an edge in negotiating something reasonable with your creditors. B, every community in Ohio and Kentucky has a nonprofit credit counselor. In fact, in the state of New Jersey, where we also practice, it is illegal to earn a profit doing debt settlement. Nonprofits are the only alternative that you have. here, there are great credit counseling agencies in every community. If you Google credit counseling, nonprofit credit counseling, or I believe the Justice Department has a list of guidance as to which nonprofit credit counseling companies are capable of doing the work. Those nonprofits don't have any skin in the game. Their only job is to help you. Um, to the extent they get fees, it's to pay their own staff and to keep the lights on. But they also get funding from foundations and from fundraising and other sources. So they're not just about making money, and I think that can be really helpful. Uh, they can also create for you a debt management plan that they'll administer for you. So it sounds a lot like the for-profit debt settlement industry, but it's really happening for your benefit. And it's much more likely that a nonprofit credit counseling agency, in putting together a debt management plan, will tell you honestly, hey, we're not going to be able to do business with Discover. And so if you're going to do this, that bill is going to have to be addressed in some other way. Now, the fact is that companies like Discover and other debt and other creditors, they're much more likely to do business with a nonprofit, and so you're much less likely to run into that situation. And the last thing you can do is consult with a bankruptcy lawyer. Honestly, many people who enter into debt settlement plans for profit with these for-profit companies end up in bankruptcy anyway. Bankruptcy is the original debt settlement process. In fact, there are two ways that your debts can be addressed in bankruptcy. If you're below the means test or you're below the median income for people in the state where you live, uh, you're entitled to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and to have all of your debts discharged. So there's not a repayment plan. It's a we're done with you plan. And no credit card or any other creditor can opt out of participating in a Chapter 7 plan. Bankruptcies are overseen by a federal judge. Everything is done both by the creditors and the debtors under oath and under penalty of perjury. They're overseen by what's called the U.S. Trustee's Office that makes sure that everybody in the process is doing their job. And the bankruptcy court will appoint a trustee to take a look at your asset situation to make sure that your creditors are treated fairly, and that you're treated fairly. And that if you are able to repay some of your debts, that you would enter into a plan to repay those debts over a period of up to 36 to 60 months. And that plan you can be paying back as little as 10% or 5% of your debts. But consult a bankruptcy attorney. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, and you want an experienced bankruptcy attorney to represent you in that process. Uh, Key takeaways from this part of the presentation: settlement promises are often false in this process. The debt settlement for-profit companies, the freedom debt reliefs of the world, make matters much worse. Major creditors refuse to do business with them. Your debt grows while you wait, and your credit becomes more and more damaged over time, taking it longer to recover. You can face lawsuits and garnishments. So, if nothing else, before you sign up for anything, research the company and explore all your options. And don't forget to explore the option of a nonprofit debt settlement agency, a nonprofit credit counseling agency, or a bankruptcy lawyer.
Well, I think this is where I jump back in. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Um, so, as Mark said, if you're going to engage a debt settlement company, just be aware that the bills will not stop accruing. You can continue, you can pay the debt settlement company, but the debt collectors will still call you. And so we want to give you some proactive information that protects you when dealing with creditors. A lot of people feel like that or believe that once you miss a payment, somehow you lose your rights. And that is absolutely not the case. In fact, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act actually protects borrowers in the situation where debt collectors are calling and being overly aggressive. And what we're talking about a debt collector, we're talking about collection agencies, law firms, mortgage servicers. It usually excludes original creditors with some exceptions, but typically we're talking about people that are calling on other people's behalf to collect that money. So what the FDCPA does, it protects borrowers and or debtors from overly aggressive practices. They cannot harass people. They cannot abuse consumers. They can't repeatedly call you to annoy you. They can't threaten violence or illegally threaten to put you in jail. None of those things are true. They can't use obscene language. And those are blatantly abusive practices that this act protects you from. They can't lie. They have to be honest. They have to tell you exactly why they're calling and what the information, and they have to be truthful about the debt. They have to identify themselves, and they have to follow rules about when they can and cannot call you. And as this slide suggests, these are the things they can and they cannot do. They cannot call you before 8 a.m. in your time zone or after 9 p.m. They can't harass you. They can't use threats, all the things that we talked about. You can ask for written verification of that debt. What that means is if you don't believe that that debt is yours, and that happens from time to time, particularly if you have a very common name, they might believe you are the person, or they might believe you know the person they're looking for. The goal here isn't to win arguments with the collector, but it's to understand these rules well enough so that you don't get pushed around into bad situations. And if collectors violate these rules, they could face damages. They could face lawsuits and statutory damage and be forced to pay your attorney's fees. But you can also ask that they verify the debt if you believe it's not yours. And that should stop the creditors from contacting you. And you can certainly say if they're calling you, particularly during work hours, you can ask them not to call you and call you at a different time, or just simply to stop calling you altogether. That's your right. It doesn't stop the debt collection from happening. It just stops them from continuing to call you. Um, so the Fair Debt's there to protect. Fair Debt Act is there to protect you. Just keep that in mind. And of course, if you're being harassed by a creditor, even despite taking some of these actions in your own hands and saying, "Stop calling me," you can certainly reach out to anybody here at our firm, and we can give you further guidance. And we might actually bring a case in that situation if it's abusive enough. So. With that, we have a few more minutes left here. I want to turn it over to my colleague Brian Flick, who's going to bring us home on the anchor leg.
Well, good evening, everyone, or late afternoon. Thank you for being here. And, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the new wave of financing and alternatives as you're looking. We've talked a lot about, credit, things like that. And one of the things that you'll notice as we get further and further into the 21st century is really this rise of alternative financing, alternative ways to get money, get credit. And, one thing I want to think about, as we all borrow money, we think about interest and how does interest, affect us. And in preparing for today, I saw this graphic and it's a few years old, but I think it really just kind of animates what you need to think about and what we all need to think about, including myself, when we take out credit. So, I might get my bank loan, might be able to go to the bank or even my credit card has a pretty good percentage interest rate in the teens. Well, I borrow $1,500 or $1,500, I may only be paying back another $123 of interest. Well, converse that with this middle kind of loan here, which is kind of a loan we're going to talk about with a few financial services companies in a minute that are a little bit higher interest, 36%. $1,500 paying that back costs me another $283. All right, well, let's talk about kind of the newer wave of loan. And the reason this is called OppFi, it refers to an online lender that is also a very prominent payday lender that offers interest rates in the hundreds of percent. So 152% loan. And when you borrow that 1,500, you're actually paying back $1,360. Well, that same $1,500, depending on how you borrowed it back, you could be paying back hundreds, but with these horrible predatory loans we're about to talk about, thousands of dollars. Before I get to that, I want to talk about something that we are seeing a lot more of in our office, but certainly for those of you like me who, even Amazon, if you go shop on Amazon or some other places, Temu, not a big fan of that one, just products wise, but Amazon, there's now for the last almost year, there is an option when you look to buy something for certain items, I can pay later or I can pay in installments. I would love to get my Cookie Monster. Um, I'd love to get my Cookie Monster statue, but I don't have $50 today. Well, I can go on and pay $15 a month for four installments. What a deal. The problem with these loans, and I've pointed out a couple of companies, Affirm is the one that you see on Amazon. You may see them online with a lot of retailers now. Klarna is the largest buy now, pay here later independent company out there, and they have their own direct website, but you'll see them a lot with online retailers. But the one that a lot of people don't necessarily associate with this, but it really is a product, is Care Credit. And Care Credit, a lot of you are familiar with it or will be familiar with it when you go to your dentist's office or your vet. And a lot of us, especially those of us with animals like me, my cats, they're sick. We need to go take them in. They need something. And, you've got to make that decision for care, but you don't have $1,000 and you just don't have it on your credit card. You're maxed out. You haven't gotten paid. And they say, all right, we can help you fill out this application. And what Care Credit typically does and how a lot of these companies suck you in is you can borrow the money, but if you pay us back in 6 months or a year, you can pay us back at no interest. Well, a couple of problems with these companies. The big prominent one is two things. One, what happens when I get to the end of my installment at no interest? If you haven't looked at the terms and conditions, you find out that your interest rate is in the 30%, 40%, even higher, depending on what state you're in. Or with some of these companies, they may have a right to take the item back. You see these with some of these buy now, pay later with car loans. You may think of a buy here, pay here, car loan, car lot, same thing. But the big thing that really jumps out about these companies, a lot of them don't look at your income as an ability to pay. There's a big lawsuit that we are not a part of against Klarna that just got filed within the last 2 weeks. And what's really fascinating about that lawsuit, and very important, is not only do they not look at your ability to pay, but when they approve you for credit, they give you a badge that says, we think you should be able to borrow $80. But if you pay us and you pay, even start making payments, we're going to let you borrow the next time $200, $500 in installments. And what it does is it creates this cycle for people to say, these are great contracts because I only have to pay, I want that $50 Cookie Monster, but I only have to pay $10 now. Well, but I can now buy two of them because they'll give me $100. But the other ways they get you in, the auto pay cycle. Most of these companies, for the most part, as a requirement to sign up for the product, require you to auto pay your account. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's no online payment system. They want to be able to draw out of your bank account. Well, with that, you lose track of these loans. If you're like me, you may have a few things on auto but you forget that they're there, or auto charges, or if you're on Amazon, auto shipping. Same kind of concept. I forget I have so many of these going. They have all these little debts that I'm paying, or all these little micro loans that I'm paying. The other thing that you're going to see on the back end, if you do miss a payment, one of the things that a lot of these companies do, Affirm, Care Credit, and Klarna have been sued for this, and we've looked at this, is late fees. They may charge late fees on the same missed payment every time repetitively. So it's not just I'm paying interest upon interest potentially, but now I'm paying the same late fee 10 times. There's also, fundamentally, and Mark was talking about this with the debt settlement companies, a lot of these companies, because they originate primarily online, set aside your rights to arbitrate. Many of them lack an ability to resolve disputes. A lot of us deal with a company like this as well, where it's mind-numbing. Google. Many of us may have Google use Google products who are watching this. They don't have a number to call. They don't have a person. You have to do everything by chat. So you lose that ability to fix things, resolve things. And generally, if you fall behind on these kind of loans and you have to file a suit, or you get sued, or you need to file suit, you need to hire a lawyer like us to consult and then look at how we do this under the contract. It can be very convoluted. So you just be very wary when you're getting into these loans. And I caption this, is it wise to borrow money from FinWise? Because now we're really talking about that middle lender and that lender that's charging the hundreds of percent of APR. This is probably the biggest thing when you're getting lines of credit. A lot of us are getting them now online, but a lot of us are not getting them from Capital One, Discover, or Chase. We're getting them through companies that we find just on the internet. I need credit. I need a personal loan. Many of you may be familiar with payday loans. Well, think about payday loans on steroids. We don't call them payday loans anymore. We call them opportunity loans, financial services loans, get out of debt loans. But these companies that I've kind of identified here, Net Credit, FinWise, Capital Community Bank, and OppLoans, these are companies that you don't know the name of them, but you're going to know their product. Yendo I put in here because Yendo is kind of, the big scam that I think a lot of Ohioans don't look at, or even Kentuckians, if you're from Kentucky and watching this, or will watch this. They're a title loan company. And how they do it, they don't call themselves a title loan, they're an app. Yendo is a very new company within the last 2 years, but by an app, you can download their app. Their app's going to let you borrow money. They ask for your name. They ask for your email address. They ask for what you think your income will be for the year. By doing that, then they'll say, congratulations, we'll give you a $3,000 loan, but we need a car title. And
Brian, we got about 3 minutes left in
yep,
this presentation, and I know
sure.
you have a lot of wealth of information to share.
Well, and I do. And, the problem with these loans that we're talking about, look at the interest rates in the Rent-A-Bank. The big problem here, you're not dealing with an Ohio bank. You're dealing with a bank probably out of Utah or out of Delaware. In Utah, there is no usury law, which means they can charge you those ridiculous rates of interest and get away with it. So bottom line, this kind of big takeaway from these predatory companies, look at the dotted line. Look at everything before you sign that dotted line. If you do take a buy now, pay later loan out, know when your term is up. Know if you're at 0% interest, take advantage of it. Make sure you can pay it now. Get away from that. What happens if I can't? Or if I can't, take the steps to try to see if you can get more time. Know who you're borrowing against is really the big message. And I know I've said that a few times. And with that, we're happy, I know one of you is live. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer any questions. But really, we want to thank you all, for watching this, and we're happy to be a resource for all of you. we have the email address. Don't hesitate to send us an email or give us a call.
Right. It's
And
TSA help at DannLaw.com.